All right, good news. Good news, everybody, because the how to run a Shabbos table has been unavailable due to my computer being fixed and my PDF was lost. So the good news is that my PDF is back, and if anybody is interested in how to run a Shabbos table, for those who are ordering online, you could pay through PayPal at my Gmail address, which is Dovid B. Kaplan, B as in baseball, basketball, badminton, best. Dovid B. Kaplan at Gmail is $14 through PayPal. And for those who want to buy the hard copy, I have the hard copy over here. And I won't tell you the price. I don't want the people on or any time to be upset. Okay, here we go. Page 108068. We're starting now Parsha's Savo. Now, just a bit of an introduction. Okay, so the Torah says, "V'haya ki Savo el haaretz asher Hashem lokecha nosen lecha nachala." When Hashem, you come to the land, Moshe Rabbeinu says to the Jewish people, "V'yirishta v'yashavta ba," and you will take over the land. So what do? Agricultural law. V'lakachta meireshis kol pri ha'adama. You take the first fruits, asher tavi me'artzecha, which you bring from your land, asher Hashem elokecha nosen lach, v'samta batene, you put it in a basket, ve'alachta el hamakom asher yivchar Hashem elokecha l'shaken shemo sham. You go to the Beis HaMikdash with the first fruits. And the Gemara, please take chumashim, gentlemen. There should be chumashim available. They pass them out there. Thank you. And the Gemara says, page 1068. And you take from the first fruits. And the Gemara says the halacha is the farmer goes down to his field. We're talking about fruits from the 7 species. And he sees a fig that has broken through or a pomegranate, and he wraps a ribbon around it. So he marks it off as the first one. Then eventually gathers in the first fruits, puts them in a basket, and they make a big to-do where they gather everybody together. They march together to Yerushalayim with these baskets on their shoulders, and you can even adorn the baskets. And you go to the Beis HaMikdash and you give the basket, you present it to the Kohen, and the Kohen is God's representative on earth. That's what the Torah says. That is the mitzvah. It's called bikurim. Bikurim comes from the word bechor. Bechor is the firstborn. So just as the bechor is the firstborn, this is the first fruits. And you give the first fruits too. You produce the first fruits of your field, which you're allowed to eat. Remember, the first 3 years you're not allowed to eat them at all because they're orla. And then you take these first fruits and you bring them up to Yerushalayim and you give them to the Kohen, and it's a very big ceremony. The Kohen waves them. The Torah goes through a description of what's going on here, which we'll get to in a little while, if not today, next week. But that's the description of the mitzvah. The idea of the mitzvah, what's the idea of bringing your first fruits and bringing it to the Beis HaMikdash and giving it to the Kohen? What's the idea over here? So the basic, what's that? Somebody said it? Hakarat hatov. What is hakarat hatov? Hakarat is very good, Mayor. Hakarat hatov literally means recognizing the good. It's what we call in English appreciation. And in Hebrew it's called hakarat hatov because appreciation means, what is appreciation? I recognize the good you've done for me. That's what appreciation is. That's hakarat. In Hebrew it's called hakarat hatov. And there are very few traits which are as despicable and intolerable as somebody who's an ingrate. Somebody who is not grateful for what you've done for them on a human level. And you give a guy a ride and he gets out of your car and doesn't say thank you. And what, do you need the thank you? Does a thank you really matter? The thank you means that he's recognizing the fact that you've done something for what? I gave you a ride, you didn't even recognize I did it for you? It's not I need the thank you. My life doesn't depend on your thank you, but it's human nature. I'll tell you, it's the same idea. Do you ever happen that you get nudged by somebody, you're walking along and somebody just bumps into you? And they just walk right past you. If you've been in Israel for any great length of time, like about 10 minutes, it's probably happened to you, right? And somebody just, yesterday I was on the train, 2 stops in a row, I saw 2 women, older women. This train stops, and I hear 2 older women in their 70s, or 60s, 70s for sure, 60s for sure, 70s. They're yelling at each other. The woman's getting off the train and said, "What are you pushing for?" And they got off the train and they're still pushing. They're still yelling at each other. And I'm sitting on the train, so I think, "Come on, let's see you go." I want to see it. Let's see you. I'm really looking for some action. And they're yelling at each other because somebody got pushed. Then on the next train station, again the same thing happened. two women started yelling at each other. I guess it was going around yesterday. But the Tuesday, for something, almost exactly. Mama said one stop later. Somebody pushes past you, somebody nudges you. You're like, whoa. Now what? Did it hurt you? It didn't hurt. It doesn't really matter. What's the difference? Yeah. Or somebody. Why are you bothered by it? You're bothered by it because a guy who nudges you and doesn't say "excuse me" is making a statement. It's not the pain. He's making a statement. You're insignificant. You don't matter. And therefore he didn't say excuse me. What does excuse me help? If the guy nudged you, he nudged you. What does excuse me help? The answer is he's saying to you, you don't matter. And everybody wants to feel that they matter. Every human being feels that I've got a certain dignity, a certain self-worth. So the guy nudged you. So you want to say excuse me. What does excuse me help? What does thank you help? It acknowledges the fact that you exist. Nobody wants to feel they don't exist. That's why it didn't ever happen to you. You got a hard slap on the back. Then you turn around and you see it's a real good friend of yours who I haven't seen for a while. So you're okay with it. What's the difference? Was there pain or there wasn't pain? The answer is depends who's hitting you. Right? You have a right to hit me. You don't have a right to hit me. Right? If you hit me, then again, so depending on the level of the pain. So the hakarat hatov is such a basic human characteristic, and our purpose in life. This is our purpose in life. It's not me. The commentary says our purpose in life is to acknowledge God has given us. He gives us this, gives us that, and gives us the other. It's to have hakarat hatov, to recognize. I recommend, by the way, when you're davening Shemona Esrei, at some point, usually modim is a good point. When you say modim anachnu lach, we thank you, Hashem. What does the word modim mean, by the way?
We stand.
No, that's omeid. That's omeid. What's modeh? I agree. I admit. What's the connection between admitting and thanking? Because when I thank you, I'm admitting that I owe you. That's what thanking is. That's why That's why I've told you that in sometimes people say yashar koach, right? When you say yashar koach, when you get out of you say or tizkil mitzvahs, right? That's not thank you. Yashar koach and tizkil mitzvahs. That's not thank you. That's giving you a bracha. To the contrary, that it's not healthy. Because when you say tizkil mitzvahs, that means you did me a favor, now I'm doing you a favor back. Now we're even. Because I've given you my blessing, which is just worth so much. You gave me a ride and I gave you a blessing. Now we're even. And you shouldn't feel you're even. A guy gave you a ride, you should say thank you. That means I owe you one. That's what thank you means. Because it's good for us to feel that we owe somebody. Tizkil mitzvahs means, okay, you gave me a ride, now we're even. You want to say thank you, tizkil mitzvahs, that you could do. But make sure you say thank you. Or yashar koach, thank you, yashar koach, thank you, whatever it is. But make sure you say the thank you because it's important for us to acknowledge somebody did something for us. So the first idea of the bikurim is we're thanking HaKadosh Baruch Hu for giving us a land, giving us produce, and you bring it to Yerushalayim. And the carryover is meant to be that it will affect our daily life. So the Gemara says, a stone, a well that you drank from, you shouldn't throw a stone into. Bira dishasis mine, the well that you drank from, don't throw a stone into it. Why not? The well's an inanimate object. What's the difference? What is the difference, gentlemen?
It's disrespectful.
A big deal. The well doesn't.
To the person who uses it.
Oh, good, Daniel. That means it's going to have an effect on me. You should realize you should have. Even the Rabbi Lapian was once folding his tallis, and the bottom of his tallis was touching the bench in the shul. So after he folded his tallis, he took his handkerchief and he wiped off the area of the bench. He cleaned the bench area. Right now, when you stand on a bench, you should clean it off. If you stand on a bench with your shoes, but your tallis isn't going to make the day. Rabbi said, "I have hakarat hatov to the bench. I owe the bench a debt of gratitude." What does that mean? What does that mean? He didn't know the bench didn't do anything. That means that Rabbi Lapian didn't want that his character trait of appreciation should be affected even a minor amount of neglecting what something has done for him, even though the thing doesn't appreciate it. It's not because of the thing, it's because of the person himself. I'll tell you an unbelievable story. A guy told me, I'll tell you two stories. Rav Shach Zatzal, Rav Shach was the acknowledged leader of Lithuanian Torah Jewry up until the year before Rav Shteyman. So Rav Shach Zatzal, he had a Rebbe. His Rebbe was Rav Isser Zalman Meltzer. Have you ever heard of Rav Isser Zalman Meltzer? He was not only his main Rebbe, Rav Shach was married to Rav Isser Zalman Meltzer's niece. And when Rav Shach, at a certain point, Rav Isser Zalman was nifter, he passed away. Rav Shach bought the burial plot next to Rav Isser Zalman, right near Rav Isser Zalman. It might be even right next to him, but it was certainly near Rav Isser Zalman Meltzer. He bought a burial plot there. Sometime later, there was a young Talmid Chacham who died, and this guy expressed his wish to be buried near Rav Isser Zalman Meltzer, and this was the only burial plot that was available. When Rav Shach had come to Israel 40 years earlier, whatever it was, and he came to the port in Haifa, this young man was the one who had gone to the port to greet him, to help him when he arrived in Israel. So Rav Shach said, I have a debt of gratitude to him. I owe him because he greeted me, therefore I have to give up my grave for him. Rav Shach gave up his kever. Could you imagine? He gave up his grave for this young man because he felt, I have a debt of hakarat hatov to him. So people sometimes say, what? You mean because he gave me a ride, I owe you one forever? And the answer is, well, maybe not forever, but do you know what the limitation is? I don't know what the limitation is. How much a guy did you a favor? How much did you? And not only did you a favor, remember what the result was. Because he got me to the yeshiva earlier, I was more relaxed. I was able to learn more Torah. I was able to eat a better life. Well, there are a lot that goes with that one little favor. I don't know a statute of limitation on hakarat hatov. So the Torah is telling you, you got to show appreciation. And since you got to appreciate, by the way, there was a guy in England. Also, it's just remarkable what kind of people there are in the world. There's some people in the world are constantly using their heads. There's a case in England where there was a rat that got into a house, and the rat was under a bed in one of the rooms. So these little kids all grabbed brooms and they went in and they started trying to kill the rat. The grandfather, the Zaidi, walks into the room and says, "Leave the rat alone." So he said, "Zaidi, but rats have disease and they're dangerous." Blah, blah. They said, "Leave the rat alone." They said, "Why?" He said, "Because I was in one of the camps in the Holocaust, and it was freezing cold, and the only way we could stay warm is that we would lie next to each other. And the body heat, we kept each other warm. But I was the guy in the back, at the end of the row. So I had somebody to my left, but nobody to my right. And every night, the rats, who were also cold, they would come up and they would rub against me. So the rats kept me warm, so I have a course of appreciation to the rats." Now, if you stop and think about that, the rat in England may not have necessarily been related to those rats who had kept them warm. What's one rat got to do with the other rat? The answer is, conceptually, the guy wants to make sure that he doesn't lose his edge on that midah, that his sensitivity is not dulled when it comes to having appreciation. That's what the Torah is teaching you over here, that we have to have appreciation. The other story I wanted to tell you that wasn't a story I wanted to tell you. That's one I just did tell you. But I told you I would tell you two stories. That wasn't one of them. That was the parenthetical story. The other one I want to tell you was, I know a guy who was a Baal Tshuva, and he was once hitchhiking in Michigan. He was hitchhiking before he became frum. He was hitchhiking, and a car stops. Two black guys in a car pick him up, and he gets into the car. He starts driving. And he starts striking up a conversation. They're not really talking to him, they're not really answering much, and they start driving. And they are on the highway, and they pull off on the off-ramp, and all of a sudden a state trooper stops them in front, and another one comes from behind, drawing shotguns. "Everybody get out of the car, put your hands on the roof of the car." It turned out that these two guys had just escaped from Jackson State Penitentiary. And they picked this guy up and gave him a ride. Now, this wasn't the Chesed Committee, right? So goodness knows what they were going to do, what their plans were, right? So this guy he told me that he got out of the car when the cops are standing there like this. He says the two guys get up with their hair. He said he got out of the car with his knapsack. He started walking. He says, "I'm not with that. Put your hands up!" And he puts his hands on top of the car so you don't blow him away with the way. So now, what would have happened? What were they going to do? We don't know what they were going to do. It doesn't sound like it was a good thing. Could have robbed him, murdered him. Who knows what he got away from? So the lesson is that hakarat hatov is not only to people, our parents. You have to have hakarat hatov to your parents. Everybody's got complaints, gripes against their parents. What about all the things your parents have done for you? As if you deserved it. As if we deserved it. What about our parents? So you have to have hakarat hatov. Parents, bosses, teachers, spouses, and even children. You have to thank your children, do something. You got to thank your children. Children do something. They run an errand for you, fold the laundry voluntarily. Teenagers, male teenagers voluntarily folding laundry. All right, we're into science fiction here a little bit, But yeah, you have to appreciate it. You have to appreciate the kid. If a kid is good, say, "Wow, thank you for being a good kid. Thank you for giving me nachas." You got to be thankful. You got to be grateful.
Especially
So,
rabbis.
what?
Especially rabbis.
Rabbis have to be grateful too. You're darn right. Rabbis have to be grateful.
You have to be grateful for the rabbi.
Oh, rabbis have to be grateful to the student more than the students have to be grateful to the rabbi. How do you like that? How do you like that? You know why? Because the Gemara says more than the cow, more than the calf wants to nurse, the mother wants to feed it.
Wow.
That's what the Gemara says. So more than the student wants to learn, the rabbi wants to talk. I mean, what would an old guy like me be doing if I didn't have somebody like you to subject every day and keep me busy and off the streets? You know, I don't play golf, right? And my harpooning days are over. So what would I be doing? You know, say so a rabbi. Well, you know, I don't want to talk about my past. A little harpooning, a little bit. I was involved in helicopter rescue. You know, it's yeah. My brother would take my helicopter. I had to rescue it from him. Yeah. So you know what do you call it? So a rabbi, like, let's be honest. Who's more interested in being here? I never fall asleep in a shiur. I never fall asleep in the shiur. Right? Who's more interested in being here, you or me? So who's to say who gets more from whom? Right? It also keeps me out of the house. Right? And keeps it's an hour later of fighting. You know, listen. You know, so you know, at the end of the day, there's a lot of people. Sometimes it's mutual. You know, a wife has to have gratitude to her husband too. Husband has to have gratitude to his wife. Parents have to be kids, kids and parents. It could be mutual. Who said there's an end to it? Who said there's a limit? And ultimately, we have to thank you. We have to appreciate the lesson is to appreciate what God does for us. And everybody's worried about. Somebody once said, "Don't complain that God hasn't given you what you've asked for, because if you complain, He may give you what you really deserve." That's pretty nasty, yeah. Yeah. We always complain what God hasn't given us. Yeah. You're sure you want God to give you everything? That's like when my father used to say when I complain about my younger brother getting something. You want to be treated like him? You know, do you ever hear that from your father?
Yeah.
You want to be treated like him all the way? Right? Yeah, no. Yeah, that would never end well for me. That wasn't good. So at the end of the day, the Torah is teaching you have to have gratitude. Hey guys, did it ever happen to you that you're running to a bus stop here in Israel, and you come around, the bus is across the street, the bus is at the stop. This happens. I see this all the time. The bus is at the stop, and you were running to catch the bus. So you go running around the front of the bus to get on the bus. Now, bus drivers in Israel have been known to pull out at 60 miles an hour without watching where they're going, right? How many times have we risked our lives by doing something like that, and then HaKadosh Baruch Hu has let us live to talk about it the next day? They have to be gratitude. How many foolish things have we done in our life that could have ended up a lot worse? Guy just told me he skydived from 30,000 feet. Well, what can be I said to him, it can't be 30,000 feet. He said, yeah, no, 30,000 feet is a regular airplane. You can't skydive. Then he told me 50. Have you ever skydived? I'm sure none of you ever have or ever would. And I'm sure none of you have ever bungee jumped or ever would. Right? But if you have, you ought to have a whole lot of gratitude to Hashem that you walked away, that you're able to talk about it. And you ought to daven to Hashem for some brains so that you don't do it again. That's what you should really be doing. So a person understands we have to have hakarat hatov to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's idea number one. That's a guilty smile. You bungee jumped, didn't you? No, you're okay.
No,
okay.
I haven't.
Okay. Do you eat sushi?
Yeah.
Well, that's no good either. So okay. So you bungee jumped. Yeah, Mayor, I had very little doubt. Yeah. I had a friend who skydived. This guy designs planes for McDonnell Douglas today. So this guy has flown he was working for Israel Aircraft. He has actually flown in either in an F-16 or F-15 or F-16. Yeah. This guy he was always the kid when we were younger. He was always into rocketry, and eventually he became an engineer, and he was designing aircraft. He was actually here in Israel working for Israel Aircraft, and then he was working for McDonnell Douglas in America, and then McDonnell Douglas, the way he put it to me was he moved back to America to work for McDonnell Douglas, and I asked him why. He said, well, they made me an offer I couldn't refuse, which means he gets paid more than teachers. Yeah, but he doesn't have the same satisfaction, right? So what do you call it? So this guy was out of town, out of Chicago, and he skydived. He was in St. Louis, I think, and he jumped out of a plane, and when he landed, he broke his knee.
Oh my gosh.
Well, that's one of the, well, it's a lot of fun skydiving. And he landed and he broke his knee and he had to have surgery. So he was staying by his sister's house out in St. Louis. And after it was all done, he calls his father up, calls his parents. His father was a Holocaust survivor. And he calls his father up, he says, Mom, Dad, everything's okay, which, by the way, when you're a parent, you know it isn't okay. You know, when a kid calls you up and says everything's okay, that means the only thing is they're alive. But there are definitely lights flashing in the background, blue, red, or other, right? But he's alive. That's what everything's okay, but. Yeah, okay. So this guy calls his parents up. He says, well, everything's okay, but I had surgery. So his father said, what happened? He said, well, I jumped out of a plane and I landed bad. His father says, was the plane on fire? So he goes, no, I was skydiving. He said, what was wrong with the plane? His father, who survived the Holocaust, could not get past the idea that somebody would willingly jump out of a perfectly good flying plane. He couldn't understand that. So a person, and these are just little things. These are little things. A person, how many near misses in traffic or other things, and a person has to have, that's the first rule here. Now, why is it the first fruit? Why do you have to bring the first fruit? Let the guy enjoy his fruit, and then let the guy, what do you call it? Then he'll bring some more other fruit. Why the first fruit? Now, there's an interesting insight into human nature here. The first of anything is very beloved. The firstborn occupies a certain place in a parent's heart. The youngest one also occupies a certain place in a parent's heart. I have an older brother who occupies a place in my parents' heart, and a younger brother who occupied a place in my parents' heart, and I'm the middle child, which explains a lot, right? So there's a what do you call it? There's a certain, the first experience, the first time you go down a roller coaster, for those of you who do that, right? It's never going to be the same. It's never going to be the same. The first time is always, there's a certain excitement. When you're a farmer and your agriculture by nature is very addictive. I tell you once, I gave you the example once, there's a certain connection. If you've ever had, I gave you the example once of relatives, any of your relatives who have ever grown either tomatoes or cucumbers. Have you ever had relatives who've grown tomatoes? Maybe you're that guy. Maybe you're that guy. Well, relatives who grow tomatoes or cucumbers in their garden can be very annoying about giving you updates about what's happening with their vegetables, right? Where I really couldn't care less about your cukes, right? And they're coming to, you know, the tomatoes broke through, you know, they broke, they're you know, here, you know, and you know, I really am not interested. Yeah, you know, and then you know exactly what I'm talking. And by the way, you might be that guy, you know. So be careful. You might, if you're the one who grew it, so you were annoying other people. So you got to do tshuva. So then the big day comes when they finally bring in the cucumber. They're ready to eat it. So they bring in this decrepit-looking, filthy, bitter-tasting cucumber. And then they offer you want some of my cuke? No, as a matter of fact. I like the ones 3 for $1 from the supermarket that taste like sugar and honey, as opposed to yours, which tastes like some bitter almonds. No, and they're in love. Why is that? Because agriculture, what you've produced it. I made it, I did it, I produced it, and there's a human nature, I want to get at it. So the Torah says, the first fruits, you've worked, you've waited a few years, you finally have the result of all that effort, and there's a tremendous, tremendous drive to grab it and take it and keep it for yourself. Devote that to God. Devote that to God. Because when you devote it to God, that will break that focus on himself. And that's what the Torah says. Take it. It's difficult. It's not easy. Do you know where we find a concept like this in Torah? Where do we find this concept in Torah? A very interesting place. What's that? The Akedah, certainly, you're close. That's true, the firstborns, but the firstborns you get to keep. You don't have to put them in a basket and bring them to your shalim. You get to keep your firstborn children. But you have to redeem them from the coin. The firstborn of your son you have to redeem from the coin. A bechor say you have to give, right? Good, correct. Where else do you find this? You know, this kind of idea. What'd you say? Yaakov and Yosef. What happens at the reunion after 22 years where Yaakov and Yosef haven't seen each other? So it says that they embraced And it says Yosef was embracing Yaakov, and he was crying and embracing him. And Rashi points out, and Yaakov wasn't embracing Yosef. He didn't get, turn back for a second, gentlemen. Turn back at Vayechi. Sorry, Vayigash. Turn back, keep your finger on the place, and keep your ribbon on the place. And turn back to the end of Parshas Vayigash. I want to see the wording of Rashi, because I know you don't trust me. Take a look at Vayigash. It's on page 260. No, 262. No, bottom of page 260. Very last page on very last line on 260. It says, Vayipol al Savar, Yosef and Yaakov meet each other. It says, Vayal Rikas Yisrael Aviv Goshen. Yosef goes to greet his father in Goshen. Vayera Elav, he appears to him. Vayipol al Tzavarav, he fell on his neck, he embraced him. Vayefkal Tzavarov, and he cried some more. Take a look at Rashi. Rashi is on which column? Rashi is on the left column. Left column, second line from the bottom. If you find it, please show the person next to you. It says, first Rashi says Yosef cried more than normal because of the emotional such a meaning. And then to look at that last two lines of Rashi. Aval Yaakov, 260, last two lines, left column. Aval Yaakov lo nafal al tzavare Yosef. Yaakov did not embrace Yosef. Velo nishako, he didn't kiss him. Could you imagine a father after 22 years? Who's missed two more? You miss your parents more, parents miss the child more. It's much harder for the parent than the child. Most children don't miss their parents at all. As long as they send them a check every month, they don't miss them at all. The parents miss the child, they want to wear the child, they're worried about the child. Yosef embraces Yaakov, starts crying. What about Yaakov? Elonjai didn't kiss him. Why not? The Amar Rabbo Seinu, Chazal say, Shehaya Korei Shema. Yaakov was reading Kriya Shema. Yaakov was saying, I said he didn't daven that morning. Yaakov didn't daven. It was almost the end of the Zman Kriya Shema. Right at the moment they hugged, it was the Gra, the Magen Avram. I gotta say Zman Kriya Shema. And why didn't Yosef say Kriya Shema? What's going on? So one of the interpretations is that at the moment of the deepest passion, Yaakov says, I'm going to take this passion, I'm going to devote this passion to Hashem.
Wow.
Where I want most of all to express a natural human passion to another human being, I'm going to take this moment and I'm going to devote this moment to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that'll create the bond between me and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's part of the goal of the Torah. That's one of the goals with the bikurim. Take the first one, take the first product, and let that first product go to what do you call it? Make that first product. It's like, I got news for you. When you get married, the first meal your wife ever cooks for you, give it to somebody else. Yeah, I'll be selfless over here. Don't risk it. A guy, you got, not only that guy talk about saying Shema, not only you got to eat it, you got to look like you're enjoying it, and you got to ask for doubles. Anyway, here what Ramosha Feinstein, Baruch Hashem, my wife's a great cook. But you're a good cook, okay? Ramosha Feinstein, what do you call it? He became a Rav. Ramosha Feinstein was a Rav when he was 19 years old.
Wow.
And he didn't get married till he was 26. Wow. And he was the Rav of the town of Luban. So there was a woman who cooked for him. He lodged, in his lodge there was a woman who cooked for him. So his sister, Rebbetzin Small, she came to visit him once. So when she sat down with Rabbi, they started schmoozing. He hadn't seen his sister for a while. She said, you look like you put on a few pounds. He goes, well, yeah, I did. She goes, why? He goes, well, the lady who cooks for me, she always serves me supper. And as soon as I finish eating whatever it is, so she, what do you call it? She sees my plate is empty. She figures I'm hungry, so she puts on more. So I don't want her, I don't want to leave anything because it'll be insulting. So I eat it. So yeah, I've gained put on a few pounds. So he says, okay. So eventually his sister, they sit down for supper in the woman's house. and she serves him something that I guess we would describe as gruel. And his sister, she said she took a bite and she couldn't put it down. She could put it down means she couldn't, but she couldn't put it down her throat. She said it was horrific. And her brother was eating the same food every day, 2 helpings, only for the sake of not hurting the woman's feelings. That was Rabbi Feinstein. That was okay. So what do you call it? So that's the first lesson here. Now there's another lesson here. When they bring these fruits, and this is counterintuitive. Mary, you had a question. When they bring these fruits to Yerushalayim, so they bring it in a basket, and the halacha is that if you're a rich man brought fancy gold baskets, silver baskets filled with fruit, and they would bring it to Yerushalayim. A poor man brought a wicker basket. You bring a wicker basket. And the Torah says, the rich man, the Kohen, would take the fruits out, and then he would give him back his golden basket. And the poor man, he would take the wicker basket, the Kohen kept it, he didn't give it back to the poor man. So one of the statements in the Gemara is that poverty, we see from here, poverty follows the poor. Right? Not only you brought it, you didn't even get your basket back. Right? So it's not because of this. The Gemara is just teaching us a life lesson, because there is a certain tendency that there is certainly such a tendency. But the question is, why is it? Why would the Torah say the rich man you give him back his basket, and the poor man you keep his wicker basket? Why? What's the logic? Anybody got it? I can give you 3 reasons. Give you 3 reasons. Why? Why? Yeah.
I think it's showing almost an exceptional preference to the poor man.
Why? Good. Why?
Because it's shlemus.
Okay, good. In other words, the poor man, to a certain extent, I appreciate his more. I want even the basket. So one of the reasons is because a rich man who brings with gold and silver, there may be a little bit of haughtiness there. You know, look at this. You know, look at my golden basket. Nobody with a wicker basket feels any sense of haughtiness whatsoever. To the contrary, the guy's upset that he has to bring a wicker basket, which is what Hashem wants more than anything else, is a contrite heart. Hashem detests haughtiness. So at a certain level, that basket is worth more to us than the, what do you call it, number 1. Number 2, what kind of produce does a rich man bring, and what kind of produce do you expect from a poor man? A rich man probably has vineyards and fields and fig trees and pomegranates. He's got a nice load over here, and taking it out of the basket and putting it on display, he feels good about that. Look at everybody. Look at these luscious fruits that I've brought. The poor man, what has he got? He scraped together something out of his measly vineyard and put it in the basket. To start taking it out could cause shame to the poor man. So to save him the shame, we just take the entire basket without making a whole demonstration. And the third reason is the best of all, or the most certainly the happiest one. As a Kohen's taking it from him, he's saying, don't worry, you're not going to need this basket next year. Next year you're going to have a gold basket, a silver basket, you'll be good. I'm taking the whole basket that you have a bracha, that for next year you should prosper. Okay? Wow. That's the idea. That's the idea of the bikurim. Okay. Now, when you do this, you bring it to the Kohen takes it from you, and then there's an entire, what's called a vidui. A vidui is something seasonal, by the way. When are we going to be saying vidui, gentlemen? Slichos, Yom Kippur. We usually associate the word vidui with confession. Vidui means making a statement. And there are 2 types of statements. There are 2 types of viduis you could say. There's a vidui of what you didn't do. Yeah, I forgot to do this, and I didn't do this, and I didn't learn enough, I didn't give enough tzedakah, klop, klop, klop. Then there's a vidui of what you did do. And the guy makes a declaration. Take a look on Pasuk Hey. He starts his declaration, and he says, Pasuk Gimel. Pasuk Gimel, sorry, not the 5th line from the top. Uvasa el ha-kohen asher yiyeh bayomim hahem. You should come to the Kohen, and who is around in those days, and the obvious question is, well, which other Kohen would you be going to? Come to the Kohen who's alive in your time. Well, which other Kohen would you recommend? I mean, of course, The answer is don't be, sometimes we may be a little, well, I don't know, if he was a Kohen like the Chafetz Chaim, I'd be happy to give him my bikurim. But if he's a Kohen like this guy, I got to give him my first fruit. That's the Kohen. That's what you've got to do. You don't be, what do you call it? Ve'amarta elav, you should say to the Kohen the following. Higadati hayom la'Hashem Elokecha, I have stated today to Hashem your God, Ki basi el ha'aretz asher nishba Hashem la'avoseinu l'asor, that I have come to the land which God has given us. And he goes on and says the entire history of the Jewish people that's leading up to this point. Now, what the commentaries ask over here is on those words, V'higadati hayom la'Hashem Elokecha. I have said today to Hashem your God. What do you mean you've said today? You haven't said anything yet. You haven't said anything. What do you mean I have said? It should say, Abasi lehagid, I have come to tell. I have come to make a statement. Why is it, I have said to Hashem your God? You hear the question. In the past tense. Number one. And question number two is, we mean Hashem your God. But he's not your God too? And we have an example of this where people are criticized for this. Where do we find this? At the Pesach Seder. What's the Russia son, what's he criticizing for? Because he says, Ma ha'avoda zos lachem. What are you doing with this service? And he's taking himself out of the group. He's taking himself out of it. So this guy comes along and says, I have made a statement to Hashem, your God, he says to the Kohen. You hear a problem over there? Both the past tense, and they're referring to the Kohen. He's saying, it's your God, was not my God. So the second question is an easy answer. When he says Hashem your God, that's just a statement of respect for the Kohen. That you're the guy who is in the Beis Hamikdash and you're involved in the service of Hashem. But what does he mean V'higadati hayom in the past tense? I have stated today. The answer is, where has he made the statement? Another life lesson. Where is the statement? The statement was that he came to Yerushalayim. That was a statement. The statement is not what you say, the statement is what you do. The fact that you trudged up with some fruit to Yerushalayim, that's the biggest statement. I told you, when you want to make a statement at home, and you tell your wife, you want to show your wife you love her?
Yes.
The word, well, you're not married yet, but when you do, right? Saying I love you means very little. Washing the dishes on Motzei Shabbos when they're crusty chalk pots, that's a statement.
Wow.
That's a statement.
It's a language of love.
You call it that. I call it language of scrubbing. But at the end of the day, you delivered a message.
But are we allowed to do a woman's job?
Oh, are you allowed to do a woman? Oh, you decided it's a woman's job, did you? Who told you it's a woman's job? Who told you? Who told you it's a woman's job? The answer is yes. In a word, yes. That means there are certain things. Obviously, you don't cook for her. Women want to cook, and women want the kitchen. By the way, women don't like men in the kitchen. Women generally do not like having men in the kitchen helping them cook, and they don't like it. Nobody wants to have somebody looking over their shoulder. Now, nobody wants everybody looking over their shoulder. By the way, there's a double standard here, because you're never allowed to look over your wife's shoulder. She always looks over your shoulder. Right? It's a double standard. Right? You're never allowed to double check on her. She always double checks on us, which is for good reason, because we'll mess up. They never mess up. Right? So, did you remember to buy the cucumbers? Like I remember when you go shopping, remember to pick up the milk. Did you write down milk? Almost like talking to a 4-year-old. Right? My husband can't walk into the kitchen. Oh, did you remember to put cinnamon in the apple pie? Did you remember to? Oh yeah. You want cinnamon? I'll give you some cinnamon, boy. That's all you're getting is cinnamon. Have some cinnamon for supper. You're not allowed to do that ever. True or not true, Moshe? Right? But they have to, because our minds are somewhere else.
Oh, yeah.
I'm supposed to be going shopping or buying something, and I got issues on my mind. The Cubs just beat Milwaukee 1-0. There are important things occupy this mind over here. I can't remember trivialities like bread and cheese and milk. These are things I need to be reminded of again and again. So at the end of the day, the Torah is telling you over here, your actions are the statement. I've already made a statement before I even opened my mouth. What was the statement? That I bothered coming to Yerushalayim with the produce. That was a statement. That right there was a statement. And therefore, he says it in the past tense. Okay, we'll continue tomorrow on next week, because we have to get to the blessings and the curses.